Now, where's the guy with the projection? Can you come over here, please? I ask you specifically not to see two slides, one that's coming and one that I have. I need to have one slide at a time. Can you please come and fix it? One of the difficulties that we have is when you have a cataract complication and we are not posterior sigma surgeons. So one of the worst feelings is that you have to call somebody else who is a little bit like that and is going to make your life miserable and will say, I'll save you. So we try to give some golden rules from our experience, what you can do in order to have a satisfied as possible patient. For the time being, I'm treating cataract complication from this day clinic that I have worked around 160 kilometers from Thessaloniki because nobody wants me to stay in my city. So I have to go to exile. That's the Drama Eye Clinic, and this is facing a cataract complication. To show you something that everybody thinks it's a new stuff. This is a live surgery we did with 25 gauge of a drop pieces of cataract in 2004. If you think that things are new. No. 2004, we were doing 25 gauge surgery, and that was the first live surgery in the world. So we were much far ahead, if you think, because Alcon had produced with Accurus and 25 gauge at the time. And from this step, we went to this step. And that was 2016. That's 6 years ago. That's how you look at the ingenuity when you do a macular surgery. Yeah. You can see the vessels. You can see the flow. Because you have a 3D observation without having to use your depth of focus. A little secret, when you become 50, your depth of focus becomes less. So you need depth of focus with a microscope, but you don't need depth of focus with ingenuity. And I'm going to talk about it later. Then we had this microscope. This is a Haxwright microscope with the OCT, surgical OCT. So what happens when we have a posterior capsule break? First of all, the first thing they do is they lower the infusion and they take out the instruments. That's what the first thing that everybody is doing. You know what you do? You make the anterior chamber having a lower pressure than the posterior chamber if you remove your. And then natural physics law says that the vitreous, who is not yet in the anterior chamber, is going to come to fill the anterior chamber. So one way to make vitreous to come forward is to remove your instrument. So don't remove your instrument, stay there calmly, and try to ask to give you a very nice thing that shows anterior chamber maintainer, because you need the fluidics. You have the side ports now. So if you have you have to infusion extrusion stability to make it again, to keep the vitreous back. We have posterior rupture plus video. Everybody remember that we have to remove with sponges the edge of the vitreous incarcerated at the cornea. There's not a most certain way of pulling the vitreous base. Almost 30% of the people have holes in the vitreous base that they never go to retina detachment unless you pull the vitreous base. And that's a very certain way to increase the rate of retina detachment. The second thing is you can use the anterior chamber maintainer using a maintainer for infusion, and then all the new machines have a 23 gauge, very fast cutting vitrectomy probe. Anterior maintainer to keep it low, and then go with the vitrectomy probe and cut as much vitreous. Usually, in order to remove all the vitreous, we use a little drop of triamcinolone in order to dye the vitreous to know where it is and take it out. Do not go behind the iris plane. That's a golden rule. And clean the anterior chamber completely, from vitreous, from drops, from anything. But don't go behind the iris. Do not, please, overfill with viscoelastic, because everybody thinks I'm going to hold the lens with a little bit viscose. I'm going to put the visco behind the lens, I'm going to take it back. You know what this viscoelastic goes? Because it's broken, it goes down, it goes behind. And then the second day, you get 60 pressure, because it raises the pressure even at the posterior segment, and it's clearing very slow. And also remember that you don't have proper anesthesia. You have dropped anesthesia to the eye. So it will take longer, and the patient will start move. So remember to have ready a subtenon anesthesia for these cases. Subtenon anesthesia is very important. When you have a breakage and you need to fix, you need subtenon. You need a comfortable patient. Imagine to have a break and the patient goes, I'm painful, what are you doing there? And it takes time, and why you take time, and all these questions. What about the wrong decision that we made the next day? How the patient is coming the next day? The intraocular pressure is high, and the patient is in pain, in horrible pain. Then there's a white cornea, because you are fighting, and the pressure, we're fighting the endothelium, you have a white cornea that nobody can see inside. The patient have no vision from the outside. And you have a reaction of the patient that says, you promised me 15 minutes surgery, and then I drive home. That's another issue. It's another thing to warn him that you might have a complication, and it's another thing to have these feelings after a cataract surgery. You want to kill the surgeon. What do I learn? No fishing behind iris. I'm going to show you examples of fishing that they destroy the whole eye because you go blindly behind the iris. Better to clean the anterior chamber as good as possible and let everything else at the back. Don't do anterior phaco, anterior things, anterior stuff, because you destroy something you cannot give back, endothelium. You have a pressurized eye and drop of endothelium cells. So respect endothelium and let everybody go sinking inside the eye. It's very easy for us to remove it. At least you save endothelial cells, and if possible, put a lens. I don't agree people will say don't put a lens in complication. If you have space, if you can put a lens without any trouble, put a lens. What would be the result of that? Next day result, no pressure. The patient is not in pain. Clear cornea for further vitrectomy if you need, so you can do it next day or the day after. But if you have a white cornea, you have to wait. And he can see, because you have put a lens. He cannot see the best ever. But it gives you time with no pain, a little bit of vision, and this stuff to explain to him that he had an accident. Like driving a car, go from one place to the other. The possibility of having an accident is 10%, 20%. You had this accident, but we can fix it. And the patient is not going to kill you. And he's not going out. This is, I'm going to make it, this is a drop to show you that a drop lens altogether, not a nucleus. The first thing is to remove all the vitreous from everywhere. Because if you try to tackle a nucleus or pieces with the vitreous inside, then you're actually pulling the base. You're making holes. So first you release whatever you have to remove from the retina. You remove it, everything. And then when you remove it, you change your hands. This is something that nobody will tell you. You have an extra light. you have the light of the chandelier light. So you use both hands. Usually we use the vitrectomy with the right hand and have a forceps with the left. No, change it. Because the right hand is the one that's holding the lens or the nucleus, and the left hand that is squeezing into pieces, breaking to pieces inside the eye, is working with 100 cuts per minute, 650 vacuum. That means slow cutting to leave the port open to get big pieces. Use only 23 or plus, not 25, 27, 23 or 20 to remove that, and crush it between your hands. Before that, I had to use Conologue, and you see that there's cortical vitreous already attached. And you feed with the right hand that it's useful, you feed the left hand that is cutting. This way, there is a very, very important golden rule. You never touch anything that's sitting on top of the retina. First, you use the vitreous suction to lift it in the middle, and then do whatever you like. If you see something, lens or pieces sitting on the retina, if you go to grasp them and remove them, the pressure you exceed is incredible for the retina and have breaks, hemorrhages, tears. So the only way to be safe is to bring everything in the center, and then things are becoming easy. You see, after so much scratching and moving with the lens, there is no any damage to the retina. But these pieces of lens has hit the retina multiple times. In the same, we have very fine cataract surgeons here with hundreds of thousands, 100,000 I think cataracts, that they know that posterior capsule doesn't break because pieces are going up and down. Similar is the retina. If they just move to them by fluid, it doesn't hurt the retina. And then we remove the, sorry, I have to go faster. But I just want to show some techniques that is very vital for this what I'm showing. If you have a lens that dropped in, one way, there are two things you have to do. I'm going to show you in the wet lab also. One thing is to, by manual surgery always, one thing is to put the lens, the holding vertically, and use the other hand to push sideways to make it to go to a plane. So you take him vertically upwards to go to the anterior chamber, you hold it like that, and with the other hand you go behind and you push the lens to go horizontally. This way you control, you guide it in a better way. This is how to put a suture first, but this is the important issue. You see? You can manipulate one from the anterior chamber, one from the posterior chamber. You push it upwards with the posterior chamber, and you just pull it up. And when you pull one haptic up, then you dial it in the anterior chamber. Whatever you have to do, to put it on the sulcus, to take it outside, to break it, to do it, first put it in the anterior chamber. Don't do moves at the posterior chamber. You're in danger of everything to fall down again, and you start from the beginning. So this is dialing. We call it dialing. You see, one haptic is down, one haptic is up, and the only thing to do is rotate the lens and put the haptic in the anterior chamber. And then, if you have enough sulcus, you can put the haptics one by one in the sulcus, because you control it where is the most of the ledge, where is the biggest area of the ledge. What else you have? You have a dropped one-piece lens. Still by manual surgery. First, you remove all the vitreous from all the area. Then you go and suck the lens outside. You know, one of the most beautiful instruments you said is the extrusion cannula from Steve Charles. You just suck the lens, you go outside to put it in the center of vitreous, and you just hold it. You see, and you did the same exactly maneuver as before. Do you see how much sulcus you've got here? It's incredible how it fell back. But it goes anteriorly, vertically, and then you use the turnover technique to put it in the sulcus. And you see it's back in the sulcus, and if you want, you can put a suture in the iris in order to hold a haptic. The most demanding eye surgery is combined cataract complication and rhegmatogenous mobile retinal detachment. This is the other issue for fishing. If you fish a lot, you've got this problem, including a whole drop nucleus using a small gauge vitrectomy. So imagine to find yourself in this position. To have pieces of nucleus in a PVR situation. You don't want to have that. This is just an example of what's fishing doing. And now, you want a surprise video to end up this long discussion. They asked me to come and see that a nucleus has fallen down after a complicated cataract detachment. And I'm using only 23 for removing these pieces, not 25. So I have the light pipe trocar and 225. I went inside. There was no nucleus in the eye. Probably he has taken out the nucleus, he didn't know it, because we had a retinal detachment, inferior retinal detachment, and there was no nucleus. All the eye was clear. So I called him, and I said, you already have removed the nucleus. He said, no, I remember that I dropped it inside and left it there. And then I saw a huge dialysis on one side, and I tried to see what's inside. You know what he did? He put a trocar in the wrong placement. Instead of 3 millimeters, he put a trocar at 4 or 5 millimeters. And he just made a dialysis. And how this has happened, the lens was behind the retina. And it was much bigger than the hole. Look, it's coming out with suction, the birth of a nucleus. It's bigger than the hole, because the hole was elastic. So he has made negative pressure in order to suck it inside and leave it there. So we have a bit of a problem to remove the lens without opening the eye, because we have retinal detachment. We cannot use PFCL because the PFCL would go underneath. So we have to use intraocular fragmentation for that. But that was easy for us. We can do it. That's what I wanted to tell you, and I would love to have a couple of things, if you agree, because you are very experienced cataract surgeons, and I would like to know if something is not correct. Yes?
Somewhere on the video, I saw you had a single piece. I was taught that, when you have a PCR.
I hope you couldn't see it. I just didn't say anything about that. Well, I thought it's much safer to put the one piece in the sulcus and leave it there than opening the eye to take it out and put another 3-piece lens inside, which is the suitable lens to get in. The possibility with, you saw how much sulcus he had. It's huge. The possibility of this to drop back again, because it was a blow that it's much less than the complication or the astigmatisms I would make by exchanging lenses. So I try to save stages if I can. But it's wrong to put a one-piece lens in the sulcus. But I hate people who are smart enough. He understands everything. Everybody knows it, but nobody talks about it. Hanin. Well, we're talking about we are the heaviest ophthalmologists. I mean, people don't believe that. Can you stand up a little bit because we are...
We're going to enter a discussion, which I think it's your favorite one, about socioeconomics. For example, in Brazil, I work in the private and the public system. In the public system, there is no three pieces IOL. Everything that goes in the sulcus is only piece. And so far, we have a great volume there. I don't remember having an Uretsa-Valia case or like others. So for me, it's controversy, the discussion.
So, Mr. Magudis, what's next? Can I remove the laptop?